here in Seattle. And yeah, as folks will be able to hear, we are here at the Amazon Spheres in downtown Seattle with the Tax Amazon Car Caravan and Bike Brigade. And we're here today as part of a national day of action to support the unionizing campaign by Amazon warehouse workers in Bessemer, Alabama, which really could have a huge impact nationwide, right, during this period of deep crisis facing millions of working people, particularly communities of color. And we've seen how many people, especially young people, are looking for ways to fight back, right? We saw that in the George Floyd uprising last summer. And so I think, we all of us in this movement need to be asking ourselves, what can we do to support the Bamazon union and those workers in their effort, whether it's getting solidarity statements from our unions or our elected representatives like Shama has done. And if someone can drop a link to Shama's solidarity statement in the chat for the live stream, that would be great so people can look at it as an example. But I think, and we should also, be following and retweeting the @Bamazon Union on Twitter. But the most important thing that people can do is to commit to getting organized right here or wherever you're tuning in from to fight back against Amazon and other mega corporations and pandemic profiteers who are trying to tighten their stranglehold on our political system while their bank balances absolutely soar at the same time that our communities, particularly women, communities of color, and immigrant communities, are absolutely crumbling under the weight of this pandemic and prolonged economic crisis, with no meaningful relief, unfortunately, yet in sight from the Biden administration. And this corporate stranglehold over politics was on display in a Seattle City Council meeting last week when not a single Democrat on the city council, most of whom are self-described progressives, not a single Democrat would even give a courtesy second to Shama's resolution calling on the Democratic legislatures in Olympia not to accept any watering down or phasing out of our Amazon tax, as they have threatened to do. Now, this is a tax that every member of the Seattle City Council voted to approve just last year, and now not a single one of them is willing to stand up to second Shama's motion to try to defend that tax, and not even allowing Shama a courtesy second to give her an opportunity to explain her bill to her fellow council members and to the dozens of community members who had attended that meeting, who had signed in and given public comment 100% in support of her bill. And this incident was just days after Shama was repeatedly interrupted and then muted by the chair while trying to give public comment on behalf of the Tax Amazon movement at a legislative session in Olympia. So I think it's really clear we need Shama on the city council. We need more Shamas around the country if we want to defend these gains we've won and keep winning more. And it's no coincidence that big business are funding a recall campaign against Shama at the same time that they're going on the offensive against our victories here in Seattle and against their workers and other movements across the country. Our Tax Amazon movement in Seattle has taken on the world's largest corporation in the city where it's headquartered, with hundreds of union rank and file members, socialists, and community members fighting together in solidarity. We were able to win an Amazon tax last summer to fund affordable housing just after Shama was reelected, despite unprecedented money by Amazon and billionaires being spent to try and defeat her. So of course, Amazon cannot afford to let this precedent stand, right? Now we're here barely a year later, and they're already back with more cash, trying to repeal the Amazon tax and trying to recall our movement's voice in City Hall, Shama Sawant. We can't afford to let that happen. And that's why we're here today in solidarity with our brothers and sisters fighting back against Amazon from Bessemer, Alabama to Burbank, California, and everywhere in between. We know, because it's been proven over and over again, that by standing together and fighting back is the only way that we can actually start to push back against Amazon's corporate power. And I'm going to hand it over now to my co-chair, Alvin, to introduce himself and then introduce the first speaker. Go ahead, Alvin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alvin Moragori, and I'm a member of Socialist Alternative here in Seattle. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today or, attending on the live stream. I think it's, very important that we're here in solidarity because it took a mass movement to pass our historic Amazon tax, and it's going to take a mass movement to defend it and spread the lessons learned here in Seattle across the country. As Kaylin said, we're here today in solidarity with ordinary working people worldwide who are forced to bear the burden of the COVID crisis, economic crisis, and climate crisis, and are looking for a way to fight back. As brought up by speakers during this summer's BLM protest, where we collected 30,000 signatures for the Tax Amazon initiative, there's a strong connection between police brutality and racism and the way the corporations treat us. We see the disparities between Black and people of color COVID infection rates compared to the rest of the population. We see the way that Black and people of color, women and immigrants are most likely to be essential workers, thus putting them at higher risk for contracting COVID, and the obstacles faced to receiving medical care for marginalized communities. Really, these issues are impacting the working class as a whole, but is more acutely felt by marginalized communities because of how racism and capitalism are interlinked. This means that we need a united, multiracial working class movement against racism and inequality. The way we fight racism is with worker power. We know that just like the Amazon Union members do, that the best way to fight back is to get organized. And that's why we're asking everyone here to sign up to volunteer with the Shama Solidarity Campaign. In the chat, you'll see a link to sign up for upcoming events like our Sunday rallies, where we're usually joined by community speakers before we hit the phones. And we also have weeknight phone banks. And if talking on the phone isn't your thing, we also have social media shifts and socially distanced postering shifts. Right now, we're living in unprecedented times. Not only are we dealing with a deeply unequal society with the top 1% earning 20% of the total income, but now we're dealing with a global pandemic and the ensuing economic crisis. Before the virus hit, the economic situation was already dire. Americans are dealing with stagnant wages, rising living costs, and lack of affordable housing. A decade after the recession, there's not been recovery for working people. In the context of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, billionaires and large corporations like Amazon have seen their profits explode, while millions of Americans are out of work, putting them thousands of dollars behind on rent and struggling to put food on the table. Amazon alone has made a record $21.3 billion in profits just last year. With other large corporations under capitalism, these profits derived mainly from exploiting workers with low wages. Workers at Amazon face chronic short staffing and sweatshop-like conditions, including monitoring workers to the minute, making bathroom breaks difficult and forcing work despite COVID symptoms. Over 20,000 Amazon workers are known to have tested positive for COVID, with the Alabama warehouse reporting one of the highest infection rates. Amazon has also notoriously skipped out on its obligation to pay federal taxes and shamefully even stole over $61 million in tips from its contract delivery drivers. Companies like Amazon cannot be allowed to operate with impunity. Our Tax Amazon movement has shown the way forward on how to hold Amazon accountable to the communities they operate in by diverting their profits towards much needed resources like building permanently affordable housing and COVID relief. Our movement is stronger when it grows, right? When it spreads, because Amazon isn't just in Seattle, it's in large and small cities all across the country, and our movement needs to spread with it. Which is why I'm excited to hear from our next speaker, DSA member and recently elected to the Burbank City Council, organizer with Tax Amazon Burbank, which is inspired by Shama and the Tax Amazon movement in Seattle, to talk about the grassroots Burbank Tax Amazon.
Thank you, Alvin. I appreciate the introduction. And I see you guys are there in the Caravan driving in Seattle. I am not in Seattle. I'm coming to you live from Burbank, California, over 1,000 miles away. And, you know, the movement that happened in Seattle is so prevalent. It's so powerful that over 1,000 miles away here in Burbank, there is a group of grassroots citizens who are trying to do the same thing. And even farther than that, twice as far, 2,000 miles away in Bessemer, Alabama, the warehouse workers are organizing to get their first union against Amazon. This is what happens when people rise up and succeed and win their battles. So we got to keep fighting. We got to keep pushing forward. And every inch that we get is a foot down the line. That's what we have to think about. Every little victory that we win today is expounded and grows as we get further and further down the line. So we're, you know, the win in Seattle, first off, to get the Amazon tax is going to propel Burbank to get the same thing, is going to get Bessemer, Alabama to get their workers unionized. So we keep fighting and we keep pushing. But the reason we're here in solidarity, the reason why Burbank and Bessemer are in solidarity with Seattle is because when things happen, when pushback, when the corporate powers push back against the working class in one place, then we know that they're going to be coming for us in every place. You know, when the Washington State legislature silences a duly elected city council member, we have to take that seriously. I take that personally. I'm a city council member. If I went up to Sacramento here in California and I had my 5 minutes to speak and they told me I couldn't through some parliamentary maneuver that they're trying to pull, that's the citizens of Burbank being silenced. That is the people who duly elected me to represent the city being silenced. And we cannot stand for that. We cannot stand for that in Washington. We cannot stand for that in California, in Alabama, anywhere in this country. We have to push back against that. We have to point it out, and we have to call foul when it's done. The reason we talk about these things and push these things outside of Seattle, why there's so many people from around the country, is because they're looking for that blueprint to win in their cities, in their neighborhoods. They want to know what they can do, and it's possible to win because Seattle's done it. You've done it there. And so what we're trying to do in Burbank is build on that movement and learn. That is the key component here. We have to watch what you're doing, and we have to learn from the positives and the negatives and help out when we can. That's the key component here, because we're going to be taking information from you guys, but what we need to give back is solidarity, is support. Voices, financial support, bodies when we need bodies. I mean, it's incredible what has happened during this pandemic. They told us all to stay inside and there's a deadly virus running around, but at the same time, these Black Lives Matter marches and protests that happened over the summer galvanized people. It brought people together even though we can't be together. Under cover of COVID is when Amazon got a deal here in the city of Burbank. They didn't buy the land or lease the land directly. They got it through a secondary corporation who purchased the place, and they made the deal with them. And it was pretty much a secret until maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. But this has been happening, 6-7 months in the works. And they knew that they had to keep it quiet or people would figure it out and people would rise up. Well, we got wind of it and we did. And the people here in Burbank are upset, they are angry, and they are pushing back. And so we stand with you, Seattle. I stand with Kashama, and we're all working together to stand with Bessemer and the warehouse workers there for their union. And I hope that vote goes well, and I hope they, get their union solidified and recognized, and start to hold Amazon accountable. Because once they get a little bit, then the rest of us get a lot. So thank you all, and I'll send it back to you, Alvin and Kaylin, and thanks for putting this together. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Constantine. And as folks can see and probably hear, the car caravan and bike brigade is well underway. Down here at the Amazon headquarters, I've got bikes coming past me, cars with paint on the windows and people honking and with their picket signs out the window. I'll try to give all of you who are tuning in over the live stream a bit of a sense of what we're seeing in between the speakers here. But the next speaker, I'm really excited to introduce. This person definitely has a lot of experience in getting organized and fighting back against Amazon. He in fact organized a walkout at the Long Island main Amazon warehouse. Please join me in welcoming, the founder, of the Congress of Essential Workers, a really exciting organizing movement. And so essential during the COVID pandemic. Please join me in welcoming Jordan Flowers.
Oh God. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Flowers. I'm currently live, not in New York. I'm in North Carolina visiting family. Yes, I'm the co-founder of TCOEW. TCOEW is an organization where we stand for Amazon employees, workers, delivery drivers, Whole Foods, any Amazon employee. This man made billions of dollars during the pandemic, tends not to give it back to his employees instead of keeping it for his profits. It's all blood money, and it's unfair for us as employees. Shama is a great friend of mine. of Socialist Alternative. She's true to her word. We've been rocking since the beginning of the pandemic, since we started organizing our workouts, doing live streams, always showing solidarity. Her tax campaign is a major win that we need her in office still. And that it shows that even though they got it in Bessemer, in Seattle, they can get it in California, they can get it in New York, they can get it in any country, and they can get it within the United States. This will be a huge win for TCOEW, for more essential workers besides Amazon to speak out on health wise inside warehouses, more of an outstance of what's going on during the pandemic and what's the truth about it. The truth is, billionaires are making billions of dollars day to day just for people to stay home and order online. This is completely unfair. It took months for Amazon employees to get a lot of PPE, hand sanitizer, gloves. They even took them a lot of fun to give Amazon employees breaks. For them to get breaks, people were getting written up because they didn't feel safe in their workstation. They didn't feel safe in their environment where they worked at, and they would have to stop, go to the bathroom, wash their hands if they didn't feel safe. And yes, people were, like I said before, were getting written up. That is not fair for Amazon employees. That is not fair for Whole Foods workers. These employees need to be treated as essential, and they need to be treated accordingly, meaning that they should have everything on site with their job. They should have everything offered to them as soon as they clock in to as soon as they clock out, day to day during their shifts. Shama needs to stay as a city council member. With the caravan going on in Seattle, we actually just left Alabama. TCOEW left Alabama in solidarity to unionize the first Amazon in the United States. And if that wins, that means her campaign is still winning. TCOEW will win our fight, and unions will soon fight. Everything now is going to be a fight every day until we get our answers and we get our demands. And we will fight for Shama to stay in office. Solidarity all. Back to you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Those were some amazing words, and extremely important that, all this money, all this wealth that's been created is coming from workers, right? It's coming from us putting in our time, sacrificing our time to, put in the work, and we deserve PPE, we deserve COVID relief, and we deserve much more. We deserve to be able to live comfortable lives with, the work that we do. So thank you so much, Jordan. And for our next speaker, I'm going to be introducing Raghav Kaushik, who's an organizer here in Seattle with the Coalition of Seattle Indian Americans, although he's speaking in a personal capacity. Raghav has helped organize in solidarity with Indian workers opposing the Indian President Modi's racist citizenship laws and neoliberal attacks on farmers, and he's a strong supporter of the Tax Amazon movement and Shama Sawant. So here we go, Raghav Kaushik.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear me? Okay, good. So I'm at the rally and I'm driving, so please bear with me here. So anyway, I wanted to kind of start off by reflecting on the current moment. There was an article in New York Times talking about what's going on in Texas, and here's a passage. Near Houston in Conroe, Texas, an 11-year-old boy, Christian Pinardi, was found dead in his bed on Monday morning. His family had no power the night before, and his parents, his siblings, and the boy had huddled together in one bedroom. Christian was the focus, after his death, Christian was the focus of a hastily assembled GoFundMe page. It requested donations to cover the expenses of his burial. The page showed a picture of the boy in a thin red hoodie, smiling and standing in the snow. End of quote. In parallel, all of us have talked about Amazon's profits. Quoting Forbes, a recent article from Forbes, Amazon delivered a record performance in 2020 with annual revenues of increase in annual revenue of 38%, up to $386 billion. a growth of over $100 billion compared to last year. And an increase in net profit was up by 84% for the year as compared to the last year. So this is the kind of phenomenon that the previous speakers also spoke about, and I'm also talking about. This is not, another indication of this. This is not isolated to the last year or the year before. It's a multi-decade phenomenon. The Rand Corporation recently did a study which basically showed that the redistribution of wealth upwards from the bottom 90% to the top 1% was close to $50 trillion. That's over the last few decades of what we call the neoliberal period. This kind of disgusting level of inequality is global. In India, if you look at India, the Reliance India Limited, Reliance Industries Limited, sorry, they reported a 12.5% increase in profits over the last year. So this is huge. I mean, if Reliance Indian Industry Limited is it's like the equivalent of Amazon in India. At the same time as that, if you read the National Family Health Survey, which released a report in India in the last year, this was pre-COVID, they indicated that they released data for multiple states. And out of 6 out of the 10 major states for which they released data, they reported an increase in children who are underweight and stunting compared to 2014, 2015, which was the period when Narendra Modi got elected as Prime Minister. So this kind of phenomenon of inequality is global in scope. But we are here as part of the resistance. And the resistance is also global in scope. Previous speakers have already spoken about the various resistances happening against Amazon. There's also the farmer protest happening right now in India against the brutal laws which threaten the food security of everyone. And that's in solidarity with, we have obviously deep connections between the fight in the US and the fight in India. It's a global fight and the problems are very similar. There's another aspect which I want to talk about. This particular event today is also triggered by, because we won a victory in tax Amazon last year, and this is a response. There was a reaction, and we are fighting against that. That's a component of today's event. And it's interesting to ask, what is it that motivates the big business to fight back against tax Amazon? If you look at Amazon's staggering numbers, it's not like they're worried about their fourth quarter's profit or the next year's short-term profit, right? The tax Amazon amount, while a significant victory for working people, is barely a dent on Amazon's revenue. So why is it that they're so eager to fight back with both the recall campaign as well as what's going on in the state legislature? And the answer is, we constitute the threat of a good example, right? The worry that Amazon has, I guess, and other big businesses like Amazon have, is that we're starting off with a citywide tax. We're not going to stop there. We might be asking for more taxes. We might be asking for double taxes, triple taxes, as we absolutely should. And who knows, eventually in the long run, we might be even asking for public ownership of Amazon. And they don't want any of that, right? What they want is that when children die, there should be GoFundMe campaigns to collect money for their burials. Hello?
You're still good, Dad.
For a moment,
Sorry,
you're
Dad.
back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raghav. I could barely hear what you were saying through most of that because things are really popping here at the Amazon headquarters now. As folks can hear, we've got the entire block surrounded with cars and bikes just circling. There's also folks on foot, social distance, wearing masks, marching around and around with picket signs. You can hear the honks outside. I'm gonna try and let you guys stay with the front view here as we go up around the corner here. You can see a whole group of folks out on the corner handing out pickets to the cars as they go past. Really, really just a cool scene. I hope everyone who's watching on live stream can kind of get a sense of the energy here. This is a whole block of downtown Seattle, you know, the heart of the downtown area. There's traffic all around us, and we have completely taken over this entire city block around these iconic Amazon spheres here. And let me tell you, no one is going to miss this. We're making ourselves very known. Cool. Let me turn my camera around and introduce our next speaker. Really excited to introduce this person. We've never met in person, but I already know I like her because she's got the same name as me. Kaylin Ulmer is a rank and file electrician with IBEW 46. She's a longtime supporter of the Tax Amazon movement, though I believe this is her first time speaking at a Tax Amazon event. So yeah, please join me, everyone, in welcoming Kaylin. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kaylin number 2, if you will. I'm a union electrical apprentice, and most of my work is right here in the city of Seattle. As an organized worker, I understand better than anybody that collective power in our workplaces is not just important in the fight to improve conditions for the working class, but absolutely necessary. Powerful and effective unions in this country were built up from nearly nothing. The West Coast waterfront strike in 1934 was one of the most important early union victories. Before the strike, longshoremen in West Coast ports were unorganized and dealing with deadly working conditions, long hours, and zero job security. But they organized a strike that began with a powerful statement. Every dock worker on the West Coast simply walked out. These demands for safer working conditions were met with extreme violence from strikebreakers and police who fired indiscriminately into the picket lines. In response, the San Francisco Labor Council called a general strike and the city ground to a halt. After the strike was won, employers started agreeing with worker demands for better conditions and pay in fear of another strike. Longshoremen began controlling their own work environments by forcing employers to fire strikebreakers, refusing to lift unreasonably heavy loads, and filing charges against bosses who discriminated against their Black coworkers. Of critical importance, they won their own hiring hall, eliminating the dehumanizing daily auction of the shape-up. The waterfront strike was one of 3 great worker victories in 1934 and led to the rise of a fighting labor movement across the entire country. These union siblings not only fought, but gave their lives for the rights that are being systematically stolen from us by the bosses and their political establishment. Recently, my electrical workers union was fighting for a fair labor contract that actually began to keep up with the skyrocketing cost of living in Seattle. Many of my union siblings have been forced so far out of the city by rising housing costs that they commute 2 to 4 hours every single day to power a city they can't even afford to live in. This year, during contract negotiations, we had to fight just for our contract to require that employers follow state laws regarding water and toilet facilities on our job sites. We've been risking our health and lives in a pandemic for the past year and have not received a dime of hazard pay. And these businesses still fought against making sure we have bathrooms and water available to us at work. The power of unions is under attack, but we're witnessing an important revival of a fighting labor movement that we all must build together. From teachers, nurses, and hotel workers to Google Tech and Amazon warehouses, workers across the country are taking on the establishment in this pandemic era of ever-widening inequality. A phrase often heard among union workers is "united we bargain, divided we beg." The Amazon workers of Bessemer, Alabama are tired of begging for fair wages and working conditions, only to have those pleas fall on deaf ears. It takes a lot of courage to bring the fight to one of the largest companies in the world, but they have not faltered in their push to unionize. The entire country is watching, and a victory for them will inspire waves of workers across the country to organize and fight as well. I stand in solidarity with Bessemer workers leading the way for unionizing Amazon. I myself am not an Amazon employee, but I have worked on one of their new buildings. In 2019, I worked in that Amazon building right across the street from the Spheres while it was under construction. I did manual labor in the sweltering heat before the air conditioning system was running on a job site that kept running out of water for $16 an hour. At the end of that same year, Jeff Bezos' net worth was $115 billion. Organizing our workplaces is crucial, but that is not the only cause we need to fight for. A lack of job security and affordable housing has decimated not only our community, but communities across the country. Clean water, healthy food, safe housing, clean air, and an equality-focused society free of discrimination are basic human rights. But millions of Americans do not have access to these basic necessities. Communities of color are disproportionately affected by these hardships. They are, at minimum, 3 times as likely to experience this deprivation. A Green New Deal would be an important victory in ensuring those rights for all. Sourcing electricity from zero emissions power not only cleans our air and water, but creates millions of sustainable and high-paying jobs for years to come. A commitment to anti-racist education and policies involved in the new Green Deal will bring us closer to an equitable society. New energy-efficient construction will provide affordable housing for the many of us who are struggling. And building this affordable housing and renewable infrastructure will create secure, high-paying jobs in this unemployment crisis. We all must come together to organize and fight for a Green New Deal to address the staggering wealth inequality in this country. Another attack on this equality comes from Washington State's Democrats. They have introduced legislation for a state progressive tax, which sounds great on the surface, but they're using this to try and eliminate our Amazon tax. They want to ban all cities from passing any progressive taxes of their own. Democrats control all 3 branches of our state government and all the seats on Seattle City Council, with the exception of progressive champion Shama Sawant. As someone already has mentioned, every single council member refused to second Sawant's resolution to demand the state let us keep our Amazon tax. Washington State already has the most regressive tax structure of any state in the country. We cannot allow state government to forcibly take this crucial victory from us while so many are struggling due to the sweeping effects of the pandemic. Since the end of 2019, 500,000 Americans have died from COVID. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos' net worth has grown from $115 billion to $194 billion. This is the priority of capitalism. Yet they call us radicals for prioritizing people over profits. They seek to divide the working class by turning us against each other because they are terrified of how powerful we are when we stand together. They offer us what they think is good enough for us to stay pacified, but good enough is not good enough anymore. The rich and corrupt sit in their ivory tower, feasting off the fruits of our labor, while they force us to fight over their table scraps. But we carved that table. We built that tower. So today, tomorrow, and every day after that, show them that the working class will no longer choose between fighting each other or starving. The time has come to unite and fight them for our rightful seat at the table we built. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaylin, for those amazing words. Camera. Okay. Our movement needs strong principled leaders who will not bend to the will of big business and go the way of Democrats. If we want to win meaningful victories for working people and the oppressed, we cannot trust the Democratic Party to serve in our interests. Time and time again, they have stood as an obstacle to the demands of our movement and have at times actively worked against us. It's no surprise that the Democrats would treat working class fighters like Shama with such contempt. It's because Shama stands with the working class and our movements like Black Lives Matter instead of serving the interests of the billionaires. Socialist Alternative and our Socialist City Council office employs a fighting strategy, which has won victory after victory for Seattle's working people and have been a model to follow for the rest of the country. $15 minimum wage, first in the nation, ban on police use of chemical weapons, ban on winter evictions, landmark renters' rights, and so many more have only been won by taking a movement-building approach, taking these issues to the community, organizing our workplaces, neighborhoods, and schools to demand action. And it's because of these victories that the right wing and big business are trying to overturn Sharma's 2019 re-election and remove her from city council. But let's be very clear that this is a direct attack from the ruling class. And with people like billionaire Trump donor Martin Seelig, corporate executives from Airbnb contributing to their efforts, as well as amassing thousands in anonymous dark money. We need more leaders like Sharma Sawant to stand up to corporate greed and stand with the working people. We need socialists like Sharma as we face a worsening economic situation, as we approach impending climate catastrophe, to provide real leadership and point the way forward to where a new world is possible. So join me in welcoming Seattle City Councilwoman and member of Socialist Alternative, Sharma Sawant.
Good evening, everyone. We are here to stand with the courageous Amazon warehouse workers fighting to unionize in Bessemer, Alabama, as other speakers have said. Let's make sure they hear that the working class of Seattle is rooting for the Alabama workers as they encourage their fellow workers to vote a resounding yes for workers' rights, dignity, and respect. Solidarity with the union, the RWDSU Bamazon Union. We are here to stand up against cowardly and anti-worker attempts by politicians to undermine our hard-won Amazon tax to fund affordable housing and Green New Deal projects. We are here in solidarity with the Congress of Essential Workers. We are here in solidarity with the socialists, workers, climate justice activists, and Councilmember Constantine Anthony, who are launching the Tax Amazon movement in Burbank, California, where they are taking on Amazon, Walmart, and other giant corporations. The brunt of the current crisis is being thrust upon the working class, as with every crisis under this bankrupt system of capitalism, while the bosses and the CEO make record profits off the pandemic. A victory for the union in Bessemer could be a historic turning point for the working people across America. It would be a shot in the arm for workers fighting against workplace injustice, racism, and sexism. Some people may say Amazon is too big, too powerful to beat. They are wrong, and we have proof from Amazon's headquarters, don't we? In January of 2020, our Socialist City Council office and other progressive organizations, unions, socialists launched Seattle's Tax Amazon movement alongside hundreds of working people and union members and rank-and-file Democratic Party members. We fought to tax Amazon and other corporations to fund affordable housing and Green New Deal. Amazon had just spent unprecedented corporate cash in 2019 in their attempt to defeat our third election, in which they failed, and in which we promised to fight for the Amazon tax. Before that, in 2018, Amazon executives got Seattle's Democratic political establishment to overturn an earlier version of this big business tax, with me being only one of 2 votes out of 9 against the capitulation to Jeff Bezos. As some of you may remember, Amazon's mayor, Jenny Durkin, told the media last year that our Amazon tax was, quote, never going to happen, and I think it's irresponsible for anyone to say that it's even possible. But we built one of the most democratically organized movements with mass action conferences where collectively debated and voted on the demands and the tactics. And we collected over 30,000 signatures for our Tax Amazon ballot initiative in just 1 month's time, 20,000 of them at the George Floyd street protest. This credible threat of a ballot initiative was the cruel reason that forced the Democratic establishment and big business to concede. And last July, we won. We beat Amazon and their bought and paid for politicians and won a tax 4 times larger than the original tax that was repealed. Community members at the Black Lives Matter protest drew the connection between the brutality that Black and brown people face on the street and how major corporations treat us. As part of the Amazon tax, we even won a law that dedicates a portion of the tax to build affordable housing in the historic Black Central District of Seattle, an important victory for Seattle's Black working class. Democrats have the governorship in Olympia and decisively control the Washington State House and Senate, as Kaylin just said. Working people are facing compounding crises in the pandemic and recession. But rather than buttress our city's Amazon tax with additional statewide taxes on big business and the wealthy, progressive state Democrats said last month that they may need to quote unquote phase out Seattle's Amazon tax as part of enacting any statewide measure, that they wanted to avoid a quote unquote double tax on Seattle-based big corporations. This is outrageous. While these progressive Democrats are worried that wealthy corporations may be taxed too much, they've had no problem taxing working people many times over with regressive taxes like sales and property taxes and on and on. Some have asked me, why focus on the Democrats? What about the Republicans? Aren't they hostile to big business? Shouldn't we focus our movement's fight towards them? Yes, it's true that Republicans and the right in the state legislature are blatantly pro-corporate and against our Amazon tax and statewide big business taxes. But as I said, Democrats are complete control of Olympia. They don't need to negotiate any compromises with Republicans. They control the destiny of progressive taxation and any poison pills. And let's look at the last 30 years. Democrats have controlled the governor's mansion 30 out of the last 30 years. Democrats have controlled the Senate 20 out of the last 30 years. Democrats have controlled the House 23 out of the last 30 years. Democrats have controlled all three centers of government power, the trifecta, for 15 of those 30 years. The Democrats have controlled at least 2 of the 3 of the trifecta for 28 out of the 30 years. These are actual numbers. And in all that time, what have we seen out of Olympia? More and more regressive taxes on working people, more and more tax breaks for big corporations, more and more attacks on labor unions and funding for social needs, like the nearly $9 billion gift to Boeing executives in 2013, which also attacked the machinists union and took away over 13,000 jobs. And all of this was papered over by the Democrats with empty rhetoric about progressive taxation. We cannot give the Democrats a pass. This is a choice they are making to go after Seattle's sole remaining means to tax big business. It is an attack on working people, and we cannot avoid this fight. Our movement has repeatedly asked progressive state Democrats to publicly pledge that they will fight for statewide taxes on the rich while defending the Amazon tax. But they have not done that. Instead, they have, in some ways, gone on the offensive against our movement. Just over a week ago, when I tried to testify on the state legislature on behalf of our movement, progressive state Democratic Representative Noel Frame literally muted our movement on the Zoom call, saying our movement was not following the establishment's quote-unquote decorum. Other progressive Democrats watched this in silence. Later, Democratic City Council members said it is quote-unquote relationships among establishment politicians that get progressive things done. The reality could not be farther from the truth. Progressive victories are won by mass working class movements that force the political establishment, including self-described progressive politicians, to concede despite big business opposition. That was true of the $15 minimum wage. It was true of the Amazon tax. It is true of all our renters' rights victories. It has been true throughout history. Many working people and activists may have noticed that I never used the phrase jumpstart that has been used by some progressive Democrats to refer to the Amazon tax. That is because that jumpstart language is approved by big business and the progressive Democratic politicians to try and erase the pivotal role of the grassroots tax Amazon movement from the history of our victory. You can see pictures and videos of the tax Amazon movement and the hundreds participating in mass action conference after mass action conference of the Tax Amazon movement. There are no pictures of a movement called Jumpstart for the simple reason there was no such movement called the Jumpstart movement. Only a watered down proposal that was passed under pressure from the Tax Amazon movement, and only because of the credible threat of the grassroots Tax Amazon ballot initiative. We will need to keep organizing to defend our victory. We must be prepared that in the coming days and weeks, Amazon executives will continue to lie and throw every nasty, underhanded anti-union tactic at the Alabama warehouse workers. We must be prepared that in the coming weeks and months, the progressive Democratic leaders and politicians will make moves to undermine Seattle's Amazon tax while doing little to address the shameful underfunding of our needs that they themselves have presided over for the better part of 30 years. All this shows that we need a new party of, by, and for working people, a party that will not represent wealthy interests, but fight for ordinary people and be rooted in social movements. It also shows we must fight not only for basic workplace rights, but also for democratic control over our workplaces. As the Alabama workers have correctly said, Amazon presents a threat to the very fabric of society and the social contract we work to uphold for all working people. Jeff Bezos did not create the internet, and Andrew Jassy won't be sorting or delivering any packages as Amazon's new CEO. Over 1 million workers go to work for Amazon globally every single day and generate the profits. We should ask why billionaires should get to decide how to use the product of so many people's collective work and enrich themselves so spectacularly, while so many of us struggle even after working so hard. Amazon should belong to and be democratically controlled by the workers who make it run. That is why I have called for democratic public ownership of Amazon when Bezos threatened to move jobs outside Seattle in their attempt to defeat our movement. The recent victory of the Google Alphabet Workers Union shows that the big tech bosses can be beat, and how the tech, gig, and logistics industries will be a major battleground in workers' struggles. The red state teacher strikes of 2018-2019, beginning in West Virginia, also showed that the American labor movement is beginning to rediscover its proud fighting traditions, including in the South. Our movement must also stand with the working people in Texas. The Texas energy nightmare is a warning about what could happen nationwide unless we fight for a democratically planned and organized economy, for a socialist society. And most urgently, we must demand immediate emergency assistance for the working people of Texas, paid for by the for-profit utility companies. Cancel all utility bills for working people and struggling small businesses in Texas. Take these energy companies into democratic public ownership, for criminal charges to be filed against these energy executives, and Ted Cruz must resign. Let's stand up. Let's continue fighting. Let's continue fighting to unionize our workplaces and defend our victories. Solidarity.
Thank you so much, Shama. I'm going to give everyone who's watching on the live stream a little bit of a taste of what we've got going on at the Amazon headquarters right now. I'm just going to do a quick kind of pan around, and then I'll run up to the end of the block. I just wanted to first say thank you so much to all of our amazing speakers. That was phenomenal. Unfortunately, I didn't get to hear about half of it because there are just so many cars here participating in this protest and honking that it's really deafening. But everyone who's speaking from their cars did an amazing job. Such powerful words. And I think, yeah, the energy that we're seeing here tonight at the Amazon headquarters really hits on what Shama was talking about there at the end. You know, there's a lot of people in this society right now who are feeling scared, who are worried, and with good reason. You know, we've got essential workers who are forced to put themselves at risk in order to pay their rent and keep food on the table. We've got parents who are worried about sending their children back to school in unsafe conditions, but also worried about the impacts of continuing to have to do education at home while working. We've got healthcare workers. We've got ordinary working people who have been been laid off, who can't pay their rent, who are behind, and who are worried about getting evicted. We need relief. We need real relief. And Amazon and all these pandemic profiteers have been making money more rapidly since the start of this crisis than ever before. So we know it exists. Let me show you these Amazon spheres. We know the money is there. And it's time for working people to get organized and to demand safe working conditions, demand relief during this crisis, and demand some basic economic stability that we deserve. So I'm going to take just a couple minutes to show you around this protest, and then I'll hand it back over to Alvin to wrap us up. Wasn't just that one side of the block. We got 3 other sides of the block here, people. Okay. Well, I'll hand it back over to Alvin now. I hope everyone who's watching on the live stream had a chance to get a taste of the energy that we have here in Seattle right now outside of the Amazon spheres. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Sign up, get involved with the Shama Solidarity campaign. Keep your eyes on all of these movements that our speakers have mentioned. We're going to have to keep fighting. We're going to have to stay organized. Thank you, everyone. Solidarity, and I'll hand it over to Alvin.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's very loud here. I'm on the other side of the Amazon spheres. I want to invite everyone out to the phone bank rally tomorrow. Join the Shama Solidarity campaign as we're joined with Seattle Education Association member and teacher at Nova High School, Matt Maley. And we're going to be talking about his union's endorsement of Shama and how we as community members, parents can get involved in organizing for a safe reopening of schools. And in the chat, I know someone will drop the description about shamasolidarity.org, where you can learn more about our campaign, how to get involved. We have events being posted every week. And so please join the fight back to tax Amazon in solidarity with the union workers in Bessemer. Solidarity, everyone. Thank you for joining.